Today I'm reviewing a book that seeks to modernize Aikido. Hi guys, my name is Joe and welcome to Fighting Words, the martial arts library. On this channel I review martial arts books and talk about other martial arts related subjects. So the subject for today's review is Aikido Techniques and Tactics by Gary Bennett, originally published in 1998. From the About the Author section of this book, it looks like Mr. Bennett was a third-degree black belt in Yosekan Aikido, and then he made his own style of Aikido and subsequently promoted himself to a 10th-degree black belt in that style. The biography doesn't list any further martial arts training outside of Aikido. I'm seeing what appears to be influence from a few other styles in some of the techniques here, but I'm not going to really speculate on that. So the first few chapters are actually very informative concerning Aikido and martial arts in general. Chapter 1 gives a basic primer on Aikido, and among other things, this includes, the different ranks, how to find an instructor, why people might go into Aikido. It will even detail the minimum number of training hours to move from one rank to the next in certain Aikido sub-branches. Chapter 2 goes more in depth into Aikido history. It presents a total of 14 different branches of Aikido, which I personally found very interesting. I don't know a whole lot about the inner workings of Aikido, so that stood out to me. It also includes a pretty extensive sidebar on Bushido, including the different values that are listed, and he gives about a paragraph describing each one of those values. Chapter 3 gets into things like what an Aikido class might be like. It includes sort of a dictionary and glossary for different Aikido terms, including a brief pronunciation section. That section is actually pretty extensive when it comes to the glossary. It also talks about Aikido principles, things like off-balancing, things like circling. Includes the principle of ki. Chapter 4 actually starts to address using Aikido for self-defense. And this includes things like taking the environment into consideration, using justifiable force. He gives an example of the difference between training something for the classroom and how one would apply it in a self-defense situation. And I appreciate that there was at least one example of that. Chapter 5 is when we start to get into more physical stuff. It's very brief. It just covers some stretching and break falls mostly. And then we get into Chapter 6, which he actually does cover things like fighting stance and the use of strikes and blocks. He also has a section in this chapter of what he calls breakouts. So after giving several examples of the different ways people can be grabbed, some of which you are almost certainly never going to find in the street, he shows how to get out of those grabs. And this section will also include atemi, which is striking. So, how to remove your hand from a grab while striking at the same time. And to be fair, I think that is a pretty good idea. If you're in a self-defense situation and somebody grabs you, simply slipping out probably isn't going to stop any follow-up attacks. But if you whack somebody in the face while you're getting out of that grab, it'll put you further down the road than they are when it comes to the physical side of self-defense. The following 3 chapters, chapters 7, 8, and 9, are when we get the more common Aikido techniques. Chapter 7 would be on wrist techniques. Chapter 8 would be on arm techniques. Chapter 9 is on what he refers to as body techniques, and mostly those are throws. Now, for each of the techniques, they get a paragraph or so, giving a basic description of them. A lot of times we get a little sidebar type showing, tips for using this particular technique. And then we get demonstrations of the technique versus usually multiple types of attacks, be they strikes or grabs. Sometimes we will also see a variation of a technique in this section. Chapter 10 is on combination defenses, which is defenses versus striking combinations. So, the common street attack of somebody throwing a low round kick followed by a back fist to the face. And finally, Chapter 11 covers defense versus weapons, so these are gun threats, as well as defenses against stabs and slashes from a knife. As far as the prose go, I find it very well organized. It's very progressive. I like how we begin with, these are, this is the history, these are the concepts. Now that you're going to be in the class, here are some terms you need to use. Okay, here are, the basic breakfalls and stuff before we move on to the other techniques. I really think the early chapters, covering things like Bushido, covering the different styles of Aikido, the different subsets of it. I think that those are very valuable. As far as the cons go, it's a simple one but a big one. I find a lot of these sequences very unrealistic. As I mentioned, there's a sequence where you defend against a low round kick to the leg followed by a back fist to the face, and hardly anybody is ever going to attack like that. That is not a habitual act of violence, right? That's something you might find in like a Jeet Kune Do school. And furthermore, in a lot of the demonstrations, the person throwing their strike leaves their arm hanging out there, in order for you to do your move on him. He prefers to block low kicks with the soft part of the calf, which not only leaves you off balance if you take a good hard kick there, but it can actually damage the muscle and the nerves there. We've actually seen in modern MMA fights, the calf is a target, and sometimes this will cause people to dead leg from the calf down. They'll actually roll their ankle trying to step because they have no sensation there. So I don't like that. I don't think we should be using the calf to defend kicks when, we can use the knees or the shins, and it'll hurt a little bit more, but there won't be as much damage coming from that. So recommendations, I'm sort of torn because, again, I do think the first 3 or 4 chapters are a pretty good intro. I like the extensive glossary. I like the pronunciation guide. I would like to see more of that in books where we are introducing people to terms from a language they don't naturally speak. I like the idea of him showing the 14 different branches of Aikido. I think as an intro to Aikido, the first part of the book might not be bad. I appreciate that he's trying to take the techniques he's familiar with and putting them in what I'm sure he considers more realistic situations. I'm not buying most of the physical side of things. I think there might be a few good ideas in there, but I think most people practicing Aikido would take a look at these sequences and say that there isn't a whole lot of Aiki going on, a lot of blending with the guy's energy. And anyone who spars on a regular basis would go, I'm not going to hold my arm out for you to do your little wrist lock on while you punch me in the belly. It's not happening. If you are new to Aikido, or you want sort of an academic approach to what Aikido is, again, the first half of this book might be useful. The second half, I'm going to even say it might be worth examining some of the ideas that he presents. I just wouldn't take them as is, but that's just me. I hate to be such a downer, because I can tell, he was seeing what they were doing, I assume, in the classroom, And this looks different in many ways from most of Aikido. I do think he was trying to update it. I appreciate the effort. I don't think this was that the final product fulfilled that promise of being more realistic. So, and again, I'm sorry to leave things on such a down note. I try not to do that, but um, that's where I am with this book. Good in the first half, they lost me in the second half. Anyway, if you'd like to support the channel, or if you have a suggestion for a book for me to review, please consider donating to my Ko-fi account. The link to that will be in the description. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.